everyone, before we get started, I just want to go ahead and mention that I do mention that there's a pattern in this video. Unfortunately, I didn't end up writing a pattern, but it's super easy to size up and down. You would just add an inch or decrease an inch per size if you want to size up or down to your beginning hexagon shapes. That is the only thing you need to do to size this. It's super easy, and then you just follow the tutorial the rest of the way. If you have any issues, just comment down below and I'm happy to help. Hope you enjoy. Thanks. Okay, so I have finished my 2 hexagon granny squares that are 16 inches along each side. Now this will be different for you depending on what size you're making. Please just refer to my pattern. So now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the neck shaping and the rest of the sweater. So at this point, you're going to be making 2 mirror images of the same piece. And the first step is to fold your hexagon granny square so that it creates an L, or rather an upside down L. And you'll see from this that this is the sleeve and this is the body. And it makes more sense when you have 2 next to each other. You can see here I've already added the shaping here, but you can see how the sweater comes together whenever you put them together like this. So that's why I also said they're a mirror version of each other, because you obviously need one that goes down your right arm and one that goes down the left. So I'll show you how I did this shaping, and just make sure that you do the opposite on the next side. And the simple way to do that is just flip your L. So one will be this way and one will be this way. I hope that was simple enough. Let's get started. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. This is the sleeve. We are not gonna start here. We are instead going to start on the torso portion of the granny square. So what you can do if you're having trouble keeping it all straight, you can mark with a stitch marker, a paper clip, a hair tie, which edge is the one you wanna be working on. So we're gonna start with the back torso. So this is my front. I'm going to peel open to have only one flap showing. I'm going to grab some working yarn, create a slip knot, insert it on my hook, and now we're ready to get started. I'm going to insert my hook into the corner, grab into position. I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I am now going to just continue the granny motif. So I'm going to place 3 double crochets in each hole along the back side. And it's important to notice or mention here too is that we are now going to be working back and forth. We will no longer be working in the round. So don't turn the corner when you get to the other side. So I'm just going to work 3 double crochets into each hole along the side, and then I will meet you when I get towards the end and I'll show you how to finish this row. So now we're at the end of our row, and as you can see, we just have the hole left. So it's up to you how you want to do this. I mean, I'll tell you how I do it. I'm going to place one last double crochet into the chain stitch of the corner. That way you get a nice clean edge off the corner stitch. Okay, now we're gonna start the next row. I'm gonna go ahead and chain 3 to begin. And since we have a hole at the beginning of this row, I'm going to turn my work and then place 2 more double crochets to create a granny cluster in this hole. So basically, anytime you see a hole, you're looking to put 3 granny crochet you're looking to put 3 double crochets in it. And now I'm just going to finish the row by putting 3 double crochets in each hole. And then I will show you how I will complete this row at the end. Okay, we just have our chain 3 space from our previous row left. And we are just going to go ahead and finish by placing 3 more double crochets into this hole. Oh, and there's a knot. Okay. So now you'll see that we're back to where we began. So I'm gonna go ahead and chain 3, flip my work, and as you'll see, there's no space here, so the next place to place 3 double crochets is here. And that's exactly how we started the first row. So now you know how to complete the first half of the neck shaping. You're just gonna go ahead and place you're gonna have 5 total rows for a size medium, and then if you're anything other than a size medium, just check out the pattern, and then that's how many rows you should have. Okay, I'm at the end of my last row, and I'm ending on a row that has a cluster on the row below. I forgot to show this specifically, but all you're gonna do is yarn over and place a double crochet into the chain 3 of the previous row. You're gonna place it in the 3rd chain. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. I'm going to chain an additional 1 to create a knot, and then just cut my yarn and pull it through. So we've completed the back torso, and now we're gonna move on to the front torso. And you can see that it's the hexagon into the flat panel, and you can tell a little bit that because of the edge is a little different, but that's okay because we'll be crocheting over it. So I'll meet you on the front page. So I'm going to get started on my front torso, and I wanted to call out something. So because you're making a mirror image, aka you're doing it once on the left side and then once on the right side, you may start at different points. So on my right side, whenever I was starting my front panel, I started from the top and worked my way down, but on this one, I'm working from the bottom, working my way up. It shouldn't make any difference at all. I just didn't want anyone to be confused while they were completing their mirrored version of this. So let's go ahead and get started on the front torso. The front torso is made almost identically to the back. It's just you're starting or ending a little lower down to create a neck space. Otherwise, you wouldn't really have a comfortable neckline. It's obviously possible to just do a flat neckline and leave a little more opening along the shoulder, but for this piece, we're creating this L-shaped neckline. Okay, so we're gonna begin the same way we began the back piece. We're gonna create a slip knot, insert it onto our hook, and then work into the corner of either the bottom or where you're stopping up here, depending on which side you're making. So again, I'm going to chain 3. I'm then going to place 3 double crochets into the next chain space. So the mechanics are exactly the same as the back torso, it's just you're stopping a little bit earlier in the piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll just work until I have to stop, and I'll show you how that'll be. Another thing to mention is on the back torso, each row begins and ends in the same fashion. So we begin with a hole and we end with a hole, or we begin with a cluster and we end with a cluster. Whenever we're completing the front torso, we're going to begin with a hole and end with a cluster. Not to make it too confusing, but it just changes how you begin and end each row. If you were able to do it previously on the back torso, you shouldn't have any problem. You'll just have to adjust whenever you're completing the rows. So I'll meet you back here whenever I'm ready to end this row, and I'll show you where I'm ending it. Okay, so I am at my last space, so I'm just going to place 3 more double crochets in this spot. Okay, and that's simply how you finish the neckline. I didn't measure this, I just eyeballed it and saw that it was 3 clusters plus the hole, or the corner. But in my pattern, I will add inches because I want to make this, you know, that you can use any yarn and any size hook. So just keep an eye out for that, but it looks to be about 3 inches. So like I said, this row starts with a hole and ends with a cluster. You just have to adjust how you begin and end each row. It's if you, like I said, if you knew how to do the back, you know how to do the front. So I'm just going to chain 3 and then place 3 double crochets into the next space. So I'm just going to work as we have been, 3 double crochets into each space, and then I'll show you how I end the row, and then you should be set to create a total of 5 or however many rows for the front torso. So I'll meet you back here. So I'm at my last space, and it ended on the previous row on a chain space, or a chain 3 I should say. So we are just gonna add 3 double crochets to end the row. So now you should be set up to complete the allotted amount of rows for your front torso. I'm gonna do that, and then I'll meet you back here to sew up the arm. Okay. So we're on to our last few. Okay, so I'm ending on a chain 3. So we're going to place 3 double crochets into that space. I am then going to chain an extra one, cut a tail, and pull it through. Okay, now we are going to create the sleeve stitch. So important thing to do here is match up your 2 front and back torsos. And so here you can see, it's a little hard to get all on camera, but here is my neckline, and so here is the top of my sleeve that we are going to be single crocheting together. So there's technically a right side and a wrong side to this hexagon granny square. This is the right side. You can see the front side of the double crochets as we were working the round. And then this is the back side. And a good way to tell is your tail from the very middle should be poking out here. If not, you can tell by, you see the back of the double crochets. We actually want to be working with the wrong side facing us for this part. So this is where I recommend you might wanna grab some stitch markers to mark along these edges, but I just flip it inside out. And again, you want to make sure that your neckline and your back torso are matched up. And once that is the case, you are ready to start on the seam along the top. The thing about this pattern is there's absolutely no sewing, it's only single crochets. So I'm going to go ahead and create a slip stitch. I'm going to slip knot, and then I'm going to, working into the hole, go into the hole of the first side and the hole of the back side. I'm going to then, without chaining one, create a single crochet. Here, I'll zoom you in for this so it's easier. So essentially you're just going to be working into each individual stitch on the front and on the back. Take this slow as you need to, because you want to make sure that the front and the back line up so you get a really nice edge on the right side. So I'm going to go into this first in this second stitch. I'm going to pull through and create a single crochet. You don't want your single crochets to be too tight, because whenever you flip back over, it'll kind of indent like this. So you just want to keep them nice and loose. I'm going into the next stitch, finding the next corresponding stitch on the other side, pulling through and creating a single crochet. So don't worry about going through the holes. You just want to go through the tops of the individual double crochets. Whenever I was doing this on the other side, I actually found whenever I got down closer to this edge, I had missed a double crochet or two. And if that happens to you, you can just go ahead and unravel. It's much easier to just unravel than try to keep going when your piece is a little wonky. And another thing I'll call out is you want to make sure that you're going through both two loops of each double crochet, or two strings of the top of the double crochet. So as you can see, we have a nice double crochet working, and when you flip it inside out, it creates this really, really clean edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep working along my sleeve. And I will call out that you want to stop whenever you get to the corner of the neckline. So you just want to basically match up the two corners of the front and the back torso. You should not be combining any of the additional we worked on. So I'm going to work along and I'll meet you back at the end. Okay, so at the beginning we started by working through the actual hole, but to end, to keep a cleaner neckline, we are just going to work through the last two stitches that create the first part of the corners. So after you go through these two double crochets, you're not working anymore into the hole. You can if you feel that it will look nicer, obviously it's up to you, but I'm just gonna end there. So I'm gonna chain one, cut my piece and pull through. And so now whenever you fold it inside out, you have this really nice clean edge. Now the double crochet clusters don't line up exactly just because you're matching the different sides, but they're pretty darn close and they look great. So let's move on to the torsos. So now we have two completed halves. You can see as they line up, they create the back and the neckline. We're going to sew these, or we're going to single crochet these together the same way we did with the arms. So this is the right side. I'm just going to pick it up like this so that they're sitting on top of each other. And I'm going to begin with the back torsos. So this is exactly how we worked the arm, like I said. So we're just going to be working into each individual double crochet with single crochets along this edge. Okay, so I created a slip knot on my hook, and I'm just going to work into the very first double crochet on each side and get started with single crochets. It's the exact same idea as the other one, or as the sleeve. Just make sure you're matching up 2 and 2 and that the sides are the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and just finish the back, and then I'll meet you for the front. Okay, so I've made it to the end, And as you can see on this row, it ends with a chain 3. So we're just going to go ahead and place one last single crochet into each chain 3 of this row. Oops. And don't be alarmed or worried if it's giving you a little trouble. As you can see here, it's a little finicky. But as I said, we're going to be crocheting over it, so even if it isn't as clean as you'd like it to be, it's still going to be okay. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1, cut my string, and pull through. So now we have crocheted the backs together. Yay! And now we are going to do the front. So same idea. The front might be a little harder since you can't just fold it inside out. So you have to work around your back piece and match the two edges together. So here I have my 2 clusters and my other 2 ends. So just go ahead and single crochet these together. I'm again going to start on clusters and end on a chain 3, so make sure you just place a single crochet through both chain 3s at the end. After you're done, I'll meet you back here and we can begin to work the peplum bottom and the collar. Okay, actually I wanted to call out, so on this side I begin on a chain 3 cluster, but here it's just 3 double crochets. So I'm going to go through the top of the first double crochet and then the chain 3 of the previous side. So basically you just want to treat all chain 3s as a double crochet, working through the 3rd chain. And then just work single crochets. And then whenever you get to the end, I have a double crochet here and a chain 3 here. Same principle, just work through the chain 3 and then the top of the double crochet. Okay, I'll meet you when I'm all done. Okay, we are all sewed up. It should look like a boxy crop top at this point, and your collar should be pretty boxy. I tucked the tails in just a little. I'm gonna go back at the end and sew them in properly, but just to get started now, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So we're gonna flip to the back of our work, and that is just to hide the beginning and end of our collar. So let's get started. I am using a different color for the collar and the bottom piece simply because I ran out of my yarn and didn't want to mess with dye lots. So let's get started. Create a slip knot and place it on your hook. On the left side of your single crochet seam, insert your hook and place 3 single crochets. Or excuse me, 2 single crochets. And these can be decently loose. So now we're coming to a double crochet cluster. Just go ahead and place 2 more double crochets along the edge of that double crochet. And again, we have a double crochet, 2 more single crochets. Essentially, the collar will work like this just on the flat panels we worked onto the front and back torso. But once you get to the hexagon granny square spot, there will be actual stitches to work into. Okay, so now we are at this awkward corner part. Just go ahead and place 1 single crochet into this corner. You can work into the chain stitch, you don't have to. I'm going to skip the single crochet stitch. No, I'm not. I'm going to place a single crochet into the last stitch space on each side. So I'll show that to you again. Just because we don't want our collar to cinch. So even though these have been sewed by the single crochet, we're still going to place a single crochet in each of them. Just one, because it's just one stitch, not a sideways double crochet. So now we're back at the corner. I'm going to place one single crochet in the corner, and from this point until the front panel, we're just going to place one single crochet into each double crochet along this side of the hexagon granny square. And I should mention that the collar is worked in the round. And I also have another little trick. Since we made this a square, we're going to place a double crochet there, but I'll show you when we get there. Okay, so I placed single crochets up until the last group before the right hand turn, or the 90-degree turn. I'm not going to place any single crochets here, but I am going to yarn over, and in this hole in between these two, I'm going to place a double crochet. And then I'm going to skip this and work into the next vertical double crochet and place 2 single crochets. So essentially we created a faux curve in our neckline, but that's just an easy way to do it in my opinion. So now we're back to the front and we're working along sideways double crochets. So you know what we do here, we put 2 single crochets into these. I'm going to skip the stitches here and just keep working excuse me, into the double, oops, I went into the double crochets. Again, you want to keep these relatively loose. You don't want your collar to cinch. And then again, I'm only going to place 2 double crochets into this last hole before the last cluster before the turn. I'm going to yarn over, place a double crochet into this corner hole. I'm going to skip this cluster and just keep working single crochets into these double crochets. So essentially it creates kind of a faux curved collar. It's up to you. If you don't like how this looks, you can just keep working and just have a square collar. Another thing you can customize too is go multiple times around the collar. I'm only going to go once because I don't want the collar to come up too high. I want to keep the chest relatively open, or I guess the neckline. So now we're coming back here to where the shoulder is cinched or sewed together. I'm going to place 1 single crochet in the hole, and then I'm going to place another in the last single crochet stitch, and then I'm going to place the next one in the next stitch of the shoulder seam. It's kind of confusing, but just work as best you can. Okay, so now we're going to work 2 double crochets into each double crochet, or we're going to work 2 single crochets into each double crochet. And now we are getting back to where we started. We are going to skip this. We are going to insert our hook into the first single crochet and create a slip stitch. There will be a little gap here. You can go ahead and place more single crochets there if you like, but I'm not going to. I'm now going to create a slip knot and cut the, okay, so I'm going to cut the end, and then we have created the collar. So as you can see, it's still kind of boxy, but I like this little effect right here that creates a faux curve. It's really up to you, but yeah, that's my collar. Feel free to add more rows. I would love to see how you get creative with it. Now let's create the peplum bottom. Okay, so this is the midriff opening at the bottom. I'm starting right side at the back, just like we did with the collar. We started on the back and the right side just to hide where we're joining. And like the collar, this will be all worked in the round. So we are going to be, and instead of single crochets, this will be all double crochets. I'm going to create a slip knot, secure on my hook, and then get started. So where we joined here, since there's two gaps right next to each other, they'll be worked just a little bit differently than the rest of the way around. But to get started, we're going to insert into the left space of the stitch and chain 3 and work 2 additional double crochets. Okay, now for the rest of these holes, we're going to work 6 double crochets. Because we want a peplum effect, we are doubling, or essentially doubling, the amount of stitches along this bottom edge. So essentially what's happening here is we're working 6 double crochets into every space along except for the front and back where there are 2 gaps right next to each other. We're just working 3 double crochets. So that'll be here and also here. This is also worked in the round, so you always want the right side facing you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and work until I get back to the front and just reinforce how we're doing that here. I just decided while I started working that I'm going to skip all corners, just how the bottom works out, because it's essentially 3 stitches, just like a cluster, so it's like skipping a cluster. So as you work around, there will be 4 corners, I believe, that you come across. Just go ahead and skip those. If you accidentally work into those, it's not the end of the world, but I'm gonna skip them. So I'm gonna go ahead and work until I get to the front of my piece, and then I will reinforce how I am working those. So as you can see, skipping the corner keeps the spacing looking good. So yeah, I will see you at the front. All right, we can begin to see the baby doll edging form. I love it so much. Honestly, I thought about stopping after 1 row, but that's not what I originally wanted, so I'm just gonna keep going. So now we're back to the front, and like I said, we're going to place 3 double crochets into the first hole and then 3 into the next one on either side of the stitch. And like I said previously, in the other ones, you're just placing 6 across all others. So I'm going to keep working 6 double crochets into each hole, skipping the corners, and then I will meet you back here when I'm ready to join my round. Okay, so I've made it all the way around. I'm at my last space. I'm gonna place 3 because it's right next to where we began, and we're only placing 3 because these 2 are right next to each other. Okay, so now I'm gonna join the round by slipping a stitch into the 3rd chain of the first 3 chains of our row. Okay, so now you're just going to be, so this was the setup row, and now you're just going to be doing the same row over and over again until you get your desired length. I think I'm going to be doing 10 rows. I'm not sure, I'll let you know at the end. But I'm going to chain 3. In the hole where I'm over, I'm going to place 2 more double crochets. Oops. Okay. So now I'm going to, since this is just the 3, I know to put another 3 in this hole. So we're no longer working in 6s, we're back to 3s. As I said, that was just the setup row. And now we're at our first cluster of 6. You're going to spread it apart so that it's 3 and 3 and work 3 double crochets into the middle of that 6 double crochet cluster. The reason we worked 6 is to get that peplum effect, but now we don't want to increase anymore, so we're just going to keep working 3 double crochets into the spaces in between the 6 clusters and then in between the middle. Okay, so I've done a couple here. You can see that these are kind of like scalloped almost, but as you work back in, it'll even your line out. So I'm going to keep working in this fashion for about 10 rows, I think. Just keep working into each space in between the 6 double crochet clusters and then in between, here I'll zoom in also. So in between the 6 double crochets, you're going to work 3. So, and then whenever you come back around, just join into the 3rd double crochet or 3rd chain of the chain 3. I'll show you how I slip and begin the next round, but after that you should be good to complete these rows. Okay, I've completed my 2nd row, and so this, as I said, the first row was the setup, and then the 2nd row is the row that you're just going to repeat the whole time. And I'm going to show you how to end it one more time. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, insert my hook into the 3rd chain of the chain 3. I'm going to create a slip stitch, and then that joins the row. And then to begin every single, so that's how you end all the rows from now on. And to begin, you just chain 3 and place 2 more double crochets into the hole directly below the chain 3. Okay, so now you have everything you need to complete the peplum bottom. I think I'm gonna do 10. I really think that's how it's gonna be. I kind of want to set it up so that it's the same amount of rows that you've created in the torso, so 5 and 5 equals 10. But I mean, obviously you'll be able to fast forward this video or look at the pattern to see what I decided. But yeah, I'll meet you back here when I'm all done, and then we're so close, but unfortunately this part takes a long time because you're covering a lot of ground because you're doubling the length of the torso. So I will see you back here when I'm all done. As you can see from this finished picture, I only ended up doing 4 rows total at the bottom. I asked my mom and she said she liked it at this length, so I kept it, and I liked it a lot too. But feel free to do as many as you want. I really loved how this turned out, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And of course, if you need any help, please comment down below. Thanks.